223 miles alone for a solo through hike of the Ouachita Trail. What does it take to plan a trip like this? Stay tuned and find out. The Ouachita Trail is a 223-mile long trail that starts in eastern Oklahoma for about 60 miles, and the remainder of the trail is in western Arkansas. It travels through the Ouachita National Forest, and most thru hikers start on the west side in Oklahoma in the Talamina State Park near Talamina, Oklahoma, and walk east into Pinnacle Mountain State Park, which is near Little Rock, Arkansas. Last year, I thru hiked the 124-mile Centennial Trail in the Black Hills of South Dakota, and I really enjoyed that trip. I wanted to get out on another thru hike of a trail that was slightly longer than that, and it would be great weather in mid to late March. Now, in March, the last few years, I've been going down to the Ozark Highland Trail, also in Arkansas, and I have completed that trail. Last year, I went down to the Ozark Trail in Missouri and started hiking that one before torrential rains and flooding stopped that trip short. So I really enjoyed my time on the Ozark Highland and the Ozark Trail. And the Ouachita Trail and those two trails are part of what's called the Southeast Triple Crown. So I hope to complete this Triple Crown after completing the Ouachita Trail and in future years going back and completing the Ozark Trail. Now, I really enjoyed my time, like I said, on the Ozark Highland and the Ozark Trail, and I'm expecting the Ouachita Trail to be very similar. So I like going down to this part of the country and hiking in March. I live in Minnesota and it's cold and snowy up here, and it's time for the short sleeves and the shorts to come out of hibernation in that warmer temperature for me, and it'll be just a great time of hiking. They recommend that the Ouachita Trail be hiked in fall, winter, or spring. They say to avoid the summertime because it's really hot, there's a lot of bugs, and there's a lot of weeds growing. The trail is known for solitude, oak and pine forest, and some fleeting views of the Ouachita Mountains. They say only about 50 people complete a thru hike on this trail each year. I'm not sure how they calculate that or how they keep track of it, but needless to say, I'm going to be out there pretty much alone, and I'm really looking forward to that. The western side of the trail is a bit rockier, has more hills, and is a little bit more difficult to walk. Now, the trail only gets up to about 2,600 feet, so I shouldn't have to deal with any of the issues with altitude like I did in Colorado. Like other trails in this part of the country, water sources and water crossing levels can vary greatly by the recent rainfall. Hikers can expect either droughts or flash flooding depending on what the recent rainfall amounts were. I'm hoping for something in between where there is water at the water sources, but they aren't flooded like I saw last year on the Ozark Trail. Like the Ozark Highland Trail, the Ouachita Trail has mile markers at every single one of the 223 miles. And that is really nice for when you're kind of keeping track of your pace, how far you're making it along. And if you actually pair that up with the Underwood graphics maps that are available, those maps actually have the mile markers listed on the map. So if you come to a certain mile marker, you can reference that on the map and know exactly where you're at. The trail also has 21 three-sided shelters similar to those on the Appalachian Trail. The shelters are located 8 to 12 miles apart for most of the trail. On the very eastern side of the trail, there isn't any shelters, but I have heard that these shelters are very new and are very nice. I'm going to be making the 13-hour drive south the day before and staying overnight at a hotel in Little Rock. Now, the trail has a number of shuttling options that I will list in the description below. However, I am fortunate enough to have a friend that lives down in the area, and he is going to be picking me up at Pinnacle State Park in Arkansas and driving me the 3.5 hours west to Talamina State Park to start my hike. I'm going to be leaving my car at Pinnacle State Park while I am hiking. The parking there is free, and it's a little bit more secure than if you were to leave your car at a random trailhead. The only thing that you have to do is when you get to Pinnacle State Park, you need to go to the visitor center and grab a little pass for your windshield. That's free. And stick that in your windshield, and when you get done hiking, they ask that you turn that pass back in so they know that you completed your hike safely. The first thing that I do after figuring out some of the logistics, like getting the 2 weeks of vacation from work, making sure everything is handled at home while I'm gone for 2 weeks, and getting that transportation to the start of the trail, is I create a spreadsheet. Yeah, I'm kind of a nerd like that. So the spreadsheet actually plans out my trip and how long it will actually take me to walk the 223 miles. So I'm going to share my screen now and show you how I plan this on my spreadsheet. This spreadsheet shows each day of my hike. You can see that it shows the day, the date, which I whited out for this video, where I plan to start each day, finish each day, the mile marker for each point, and the total miles for that day. I'm going to plug in a little description of each day's hike and any interesting things I need to know for that section. If you are a regular on the Ouachita Trail and can help me plug in what are the highlights or things that I should know in these sections on my spreadsheet, comment down below and I'll plug them in before I go out on my hike. The right portion of the table is my food planning, where it lists out each meal. You can see that I plan to get to Queen Wilhelmina Lodge at mile 51 on day 3. They have a restaurant there where I plan to grab dinner and breakfast the next day. I'm also mailing a resupply to pick up there. My spreadsheet has the mailing addresses of both of my resupplies. They have hotel rooms there, but they run about $120, and I plan to arrive on a Friday, and they have a 2-night minimum. So I'm planning to just get a campsite near the lodge. I also plan on charging up my electronics while I'm there. The far side of the table shows what I need to pack in my pack and the 2 resupplies. I usually mail my resupplies about a week before I start hiking. That allows me to call right before I drive down there and make sure that my resupplies have arrived. If you look at the start and finish description of each day, you can see most nights I am camping near one of the shelters. Now, I will be sleeping in my hammock and under a rain fly, but I chose to go near the shelters in case there is storms or rain. It's a great place to unpack my backpack, maybe eat and hang out while it's raining. While I will be carrying the 3 paper Underwood maps, which are very good, my primary way of navigating while I am walking on the trail will be an app on my iPhone called Far Out. Now, Far Out used to be called Gut Hook, and I just loved using it when I was hiking on the Colorado Trail. Far Out can be used offline, so you don't need cell service while you're using it. And some of the nice things about using the app is you can look at the map on your phone and it'll show you via GPS where exactly you are on that map. And you can zoom in, zoom out, look at it however closely you want to do it. But beyond the map, it will also have a list where it can show you exactly how far ahead it is to the next trailhead, to the next campsite, to the next water source, to the next shelter, and all sorts of different things. So it can exactly give you within 1/10 of a mile how far you have to walk to get to that next location. Also, it can show you an elevation profile, and you can also, here again, you can zoom in and zoom out, and it can show you, over the next day, how many mountains are going to have to go over. Or if you zoom way in, over the next hour, I have to climb how high on that mountain? Little pro tip here is don't look at far out when you are about to go up a mountain, because it can be very demoralizing.
Climbing a mountain isn't easy. I'm almost above tree line.
I bring the paper maps along not only as a backup in case my iPhone fails, but I like to look at them at night when I'm at camp or when I stop for lunch, because those maps are a lot better than the map that comes in far out. It shows you the elevation profiles, but it also shows you the trail and the mile markers like I talked about. But it also shows you kind of the vicinity of what's around you. You can see other trails that you may be crossing. You can see other roads where cities are located, and that can come in very handy in case your hike isn't going as planned and you may have to call an audible. It is important both physically, mentally, and even emotionally that you take breaks. I have resupplies planned at mile 51 and mile 122. So when you start your hike and you first hit the trail, if you're thinking about, I have to walk 12 days and 223 miles to get back to my car, it can be pretty intimidating. So what I focus on is I have to hike 3 days, I have to walk 51 miles, and then I'll get to the lodge, I can have a burger, I can rest, maybe even get a beer, and that is something that I focus on. The carrot is a lot closer than the 223 miles. Now, when I'm done at the lodge, I think about, okay, over the next 4 days, I have to hike 71 miles to get to my next stop. So that helps me at least emotionally and physically and mentally to think about, okay, I have these short little goals and not one huge massive one. After I leave Wilhelmina, like I said, I'm going to be hiking for 4 more days, 71 miles, and that'll bring me to mile marker 122, which is the Highway 27 trailhead. At that trailhead, I'm going to be meeting a trail angel called Lori, who owns the Bluebird Country Store. She'll be picking me up there and driving me to her store for lunch. Now, Lori has told me that at Highway 27, there isn't very good cell reception, so she suggests that I call her from the Suck Mountain Shelter, which is 13 miles away, and give her an ETA of when I plan to arrive at Highway 27. So after I eat lunch at the Bluebird Cafe and Country Store, Lori will be driving me farther south, I think it's 10-15 miles, to Mount Ida, where I'm going to be staying overnight at a motel called the Royal Oak Inn, which is $68. This motel is near a Dollar General, a pizza restaurant, an ice cream shop, a Chinese restaurant that also delivers to the motel. So when I am at the motel, I am planning to wash all of my clothes in the bathtub because they don't have a laundry on site. The laundromat's a mile and a half away. So I'm going to wash my clothes. I'm going to take a hot shower. I'm going to sleep in that comfortable bed. I'm going to recharge all of my electronics. And I'm going to eat a lot of food. Who knows what I'll be in the mood for by then, but I plan on eating a lot of real food. So the next morning when I wake up in Mount Ida, Lori is going to come pick me up, shuttle me back to the Bluebird Country Store where I'm going to eat breakfast, and then she's going to shuttle me back to the Highway 27 trailhead. Lori sounds pretty amazing, right? From everything that I have read on social media and on websites and from talking to her on the phone, she's as amazing as she sounds. And not only is she nice, but I've heard that she'll give you some good insight of what's going on the trail and things that you should know as you're hiking the trail. Hopefully after some real good sleep in a real bed, a hot shower, and some real food, I'm going to feel rejuvenated as I get back out on the trail. And I'm hoping to make a real strong push in the last 100 miles of the trail. And hopefully I will have gained some of my trail legs by then, which will help me cover more mileage. So I am going to be planning to cover the last 100 miles in only 4 days, which is about 25 miles per day, which is pretty aggressive. But the last portion of the trail, from what I have read, is a little bit flatter and a little bit easier as you go around Lake Mamel. I consider myself to be an experienced backpacker and generally know how many miles a day I can expect to hike. However, I know that there are many things that can speed me up and slow me down. If you look back at my spreadsheet, you can see that my daily mileage is higher than most can do. This is a relatively conservative mileage for me to allow for those variables. And beyond just how well I am feeling, there can be variables with the weather and creeks being flooded that can slow me down. So I suggest that you do a conservative hiking plan for you. Now, if you aren't a very experienced backpacker or you are a weekend warrior, please note that what you may cover over a 2 or 3 day trip shouldn't be expected over 12 days, because if you generally hike 10 miles a day over 3 days and you're tired at the end of 3 days, your legs are going to start getting more sore in the middle of that hike, and hopefully you'll be able to pick up your mileage towards the end, but you should plan a little bit conservatively. Now, I go to the gym every day. I'm a very active person, and I consider myself to be in very good shape. However, like I said, I live in Minnesota, and from December through March, it's snowy and icy here, and it's impossible for me to do long distance backpacking. So I know that being in good shape is completely different than having my trail legs, and we'll see how that goes when I start hiking, and hopefully I'll be able to keep up with my estimates. I am still researching how much water I plan to carry while I'm hiking on the trail. You can see on the bottom of my spreadsheet that I have copied some information that I found on the typical dry stretches on the trail. Now, I am going to be carrying between 1.5 and 4 liters of water, depending on what the conditions are. So this will be a game time decision depending on what the recent rainfall amounts were and what the forecast is going to be in the future. Now, I can always adjust how much water I'm going to be carrying when I get to my resupply points. So if you want to see all of the things that I am going to be carrying and I'm going to be wearing when I go on this trip, I'm going to be doing a gear loadout video that shows you everything in my pack, and I'm going to be posting that in a couple weeks. So if you want to see that video, go ahead and hit subscribe, hit that bell notification. They'll tell you when I put out that video, and you can see it at that time. And finally, on the bottom of my spreadsheet, you can see that I have a little list of some of the groceries that I still have to buy before I pack my pack and I mail those resupplies out. So I have about a week or two until my trip starts, and I fully expect that my plans are going to evolve and change just a little bit in that time. Now, I have that spreadsheet that plans out what my daily mileage is going to be, but that isn't hardcore. It's just an outline. If I come up a little short each day or I go a little bit farther each day, that isn't a big deal. This just gives me an outline of what my pace is going to be and where I plan to be, and I fully expect that to change. The only thing that can't change is I need to get to that motel for the reservation on day 7, and I can probably call on my cell phone if that needs to be changed and change that up. So the only thing that you should expect when you go on a thru hike is probably the unexpected. And that's frankly what makes it kind of exciting for me, where you can't predict everything and you have to adjust to the adversity and adapt and make things work. So some of the things that I do to allow for that is I have a little bit of extra food in my pack and in each one of those resupplies. So if it takes me a little bit longer, I have enough food to do that. And, if I can't complete my hike in 12 days, I have a few more days of vacation at the end, and my car is parked at the end. So I can take my time. If it takes 2 extra days, I'll take that amount to get to my car And I don't have to worry about getting a shuttle at the end because my car will be there waiting for me. So expect the unexpected. So as I mentioned, you can look for that gear loadout video in a couple weeks here. I encourage you to go ahead and hit subscribe, punch that bell notification. I do all sorts of hiking, backpacking, outdoor adventure, and some gear videos. You can check out some photos that I post on Instagram and Facebook. I have Midwest Backpacker merch that's available in Teespring. Hey, if you're a regular on the OT and you think that I'm forgetting something, comment down below, or otherwise maybe I'll be lucky enough to see you out on the trail.